Welcome to the FNO InsureTech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world. Welcome to another driving episode. Thriving and driving.
Thriving and driving.
But not conniving episode of FNO InsureTech.
Yeah.
With the smart one, Lee Boyd, and
Hi.
the cute one, Rob Beller.
Hi, everybody.
How are you, Lee?
You're lively today, aren't you?
You know what? I'm all juiced up. It's true. I've had like 17 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of back on my very strict fast regimen. I'm fasting again.
Fast with 17 cups of coffee? That does not sound good.
Yeah, but I'm fasting again. I like it.
You were fasting yesterday. Is this the same fast or is this a different fast?
No, I'm doing a one meal a day regimen.
Oh.
So I just eat dinner.
Dinner. Is it a big dinner? Is it a healthy dinner?
It's healthy to one person isn't to the next. It's not vegan, if that's what you're getting at.
No, I think there's a definition. I think
it's not McDonald's or anything like it.
I like McDonald's.
I know you guys are big McDonald's eaters.
I enjoy it. Yeah. I like their app.
Do you?
Isn't it cool how technology, is here? And everyone is using technology in all aspects of our lives. Like McDonald's has this app and I can order my food, drive up, and they bring it out to me. Something that didn't exist a few years ago.
You know what's cool is think 20 years down the line.
Yeah.
Think how amazing, because there will be maturity in so many spaces like apps example. I mean, apps are what, 10 years old or 15 years old. Yeah. Imagine when they're 30 years old. I mean, just it goes on and on and on. How remarkable it is today and how much more remarkable it will be in the future.
Well, think about the life before the iPhone. Right. And one day something else will come. There will be a new technology, a pivot, right? A change. What will that be?
It's coming.
There's going to be smart people out there. There's going to be smart people out there who are going to make that happen.
Yeah, we have one of them on the podcast today.
We do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're not just jibber jabbering here, Lee.
No,
this isn't just a couple of yahoos talking about nothing. No, it's about a company that had modest beginnings, but now has a dominant presence in the on the auto side of the claims business.
A InsureTech before InsureTech was cool.
An InsureTech before there was the word InsureTech.
Yep.
Andy Cohen is with us today, the president and COO of Snapsheet.
We're big fans. This is the third time that we've had somebody on from Snapsheet. It's a remarkable company who is including service and technology and is doing good at both. And they surround themselves with great people. And I think that's something that all business owners and business executives can agree on, that if you get great people in the room, great things can happen.
We wanted to have Andy on to talk about leadership at the company. And one of the really interesting things that we think about Andy is that Andy is an insurance professional, long time in the insurance business and working on the carrier side, and is now in an InsureTech and has been there for several years and succeeded greatly. So we wanted his thoughts and perspectives, and you're going to hear him in just a second.
Yeah. I say we jump on in. Let's drive forward.
Do it.
No, you do it.
Without further ado, here is our interview with Andy Cohen, President and COO at Snapsheet. Hey, everybody. We are here today with a special guest from a special company that's been very, very good to our little crazy podcast, FNO InsureTech, and
Yeah.
that is Mr. Andy Cohen, President and COO of Snapsheet, the fourth Snapsheeter
Yeah.
that we've had on, and because we love the company, and I don't think anybody has done in InsureTech quite what you guys have done, and so there's so much to talk about. We wanted to have you join us. Welcome to our show.
Thanks so much. And that's, that's a lot to live up to because, the other folks like Brad and CJ that you've had on this in the past are, they're the Mavericks who created this crazy thing, almost a decade ago now. So hopefully I can do them justice. And, we've got a really great team here. So, all, some of these thoughts are mine, but I'll probably paraphrase.
Okay, well, they'll put up a post that says we disavow most of what Andy had to say. But let's we always kind of start by talking about what the company does, but just give us a real quickie on Snapsheet and then tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Sure. Thanks. And so Snapsheet is a company that spends 100% of its efforts on making the claims process simple for everyone. And Snapsheet began, like I said, about a decade ago by pioneering this concept of taking the legacy auto appraisal process and digitizing it and making it virtual. So using technology in a way that hadn't been done before and changing the orthodoxy of the industry to, instead of going to a repair facility or having someone come to your driveway to, get an appraisal after an accident, to use technology available in those cool smartphones that came out about 10 years ago to take pictures and use rules, now AI, and process and tools to get to a better outcome for customers and carriers. And so, fast forward over the last decade, we built out that appraisal business and that technology enabled business and have really expanded and accelerated to today where we work with more than 100 carriers around the world. We have our, appraisal software business and that is broadly adopted across the industry. And we also have learned by, working with carriers and all the different parties that are involved in a claim, how to inject technology into the claims process to get better outcomes. And over the last couple of years, it's really been doubling down our investment in that technology to launch a cloud native claims platform that's beyond auto. We support auto, certainly injury, liability, and property claims from FNOL all the way through digital settlement.
Wow.
But really building off of what we learned by delivering our technology into, the legacy claims process. And so we work with all types of carriers from, top 10 mega personal lines auto carriers to TPAs to self-insured fleets, the whole gig economy, whether that's personal lines or commercial lines, car sharing, ride sharing, delivery, mobility. And then, a big portion of our, technology business is those InsureTechs that are buying a claim system for the first time or bringing claims in-house for the first time and want a different experience where they have a great digital experience on the front end. And they're looking for an equally digital and consumer-friendly and adjuster-friendly experience on the back end. And so we're working in auto and property with a lot of the names that you've had on this podcast.
Cool. So over 100 customers and just 10 years old, that's moving pretty quick. That means that you've created a lot of excitement. Tell us what it is that draws some of these carriers or insurance organizations to you guys. What problem do you solve for them?
Great question. I'd like to think, and I think we'd like to think that, there's so much out there that is people talking about what they're going to do that we had to build this thing. And again, going back to Brad, CJ, Dan Cologne, who's our CTO, team, a lot of the early folks that, that started this up, really had to prove with value that we were delivering something that could have economic benefits in terms of whether that's speed, accuracy, net promoter score, true claims outcomes. And so while a lot of people are talking about what they're going to do, we try to lead with results. And so when you have to go into a major carrier and convince them to do something differently using technology that they've done the same way for a number of years, it's not, especially when the people in the early days were people that weren't from the industry, it was leading with the value and the results. And so, those are things like, reduction in cycle time. So speeding up the claim process to first payment. Those are things like improving the accuracy, using data and information to get to a more accurate appraisal based on the right labor rates, the right parts with, the right guidelines aligned to the carrier's expectations. And then certainly for our claim system, it's about automating things to make the adjusters' lives easier. Right? I think that's a key one that we probably don't do enough to talk about is, when you're building technology and putting it inside a carrier, the adjusters vote with their feet, and you've got to be able to make the adjusters' lives easier. And that's where our claim platform really does by automating things like communications and workflows and setting reserves and payments, things that require document management, where an adjuster, really smart resource that's around validating coverage and firming, liability and understanding fault and complex things. You don't want them spending their time stapling together and gluing together information across multiple systems, and email and document management and things like that. And so I think to wrap that up, it's really our technology is aimed at creating value. And that's why people look to us to deliver them results.
Rob and I were talking before this. We were talking about Snapsheet and saying, are they a technology company or are they a claims company? And, what is your answer to that whenever we ask you that?
Well, in this industry, it's like all insurance carriers are technology companies. And frankly, we're some of the earliest technology companies. If you think about actuarial tables and data and analytics has always been at the forefront of, insurance. So we are a claims company, if you think about it in terms of expertise and value. But where we're unique is we've built technology to fill the gaps or to bring the right information and context of the claim to the human. And, so much of what's important in technology right now isn't whether the computer does it or whether the person does it. That's great when, those are, the bounding blocks. Certainly it's binary ones and zeros, but the reality is, how do you bring the human in the loop and into the context of the claim when they're needed? And I think that's where our technology is very differentiated in terms of taking an industry that's historic, and you all know this, you all are claims people through and through, historically, diary driven, reactive, customer calls in, sends in information, and you're responding, to flipping it proactive by saying, you know what, you don't actually have to do anything on this claim today because we're waiting on the lawyer to do something or the inspector that's going out on the roof. We're waiting on that. So don't worry about touching this file today. And then when something comes in, turn it into proactive through workflows and rules and technology to actually bring it to the forefront and have the adjuster adjust and use their brains when it's time to do that work. And I think that's what we are. We are a claims company that builds world-class technology and figures out how to deploy that technology in the environment, whether that's integrating with policy systems or third-party vendor platforms, third-party data platforms, or even having the humans in the loop for the carriers to, whether that's adjust. Ultimately, it's still claims is the moment of truth, and people are going to want to talk to people. So how do you make that as, frictionless as possible? And that's really what we are.
Well, and I imagine you were saying earlier, a lot of the funding that you receive goes towards building those technologies and workflows and really improving everything. And it leads us to the announcement of the Series E a little bit over a month or two ago, right? Raising additional capital for improving the product. I mean, how exciting is that?
Oh, I mean, it's incredibly exciting. I mean, as you think about it right now, the opportunity to invest in insurance is very different when the company was founded. And I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but if you think about it, there was an InsureTech when Snapsheet was created, right? That
Right.
wasn't even a concept at the time. We're talking about a very different, coming out of the last financial crisis, and I think our Series A, we were trying to prove that you could drive and build, right estimates from photos, which is, again, the antithesis of what was, the orthodoxy of the industry at the time,
Right.
to the point where most people said you're crazy.
Right. In fact, it was heretical.
Yeah, exactly. Heretical is probably a better word, right? And alchemy, right? And now you fast forward, even this was even true in 2016, 2017. Now you fast forward, and everyone's talking about automating everything, digitizing everything, and there's no humans in the middle of it. And that's how fast the technology is changing. So the fundraise is absolutely to continue to invest in this claims platform, which is super differentiated, and our software to, like I said, we've expanded into property. We're doing injury claims in it. We obviously payments with multiple fantastic banking partners around it. And so it's really critical at this juncture to keep investing in the R&D and in our great technology team to build these differentiated features, because what's fascinating in the environment right now is, we've got all of these differentiated features in our claim system, but there's a lot of base things that a claim system also has to have from a regulatory perspective, a compliance perspective as well. And it's just a massive set of data challenges, workflow challenges, platform challenges globally. And so we feel really confident and lucky that we get to take this on in multiple geographies across multiple lines of business with, credibility, having done this for a decade now and working with some of the best and largest carriers in the world that have confidence in us to do it. And then all of our customers on this, get the benefit, as it's a multi-tenant cloud platform, that get the benefit of all of these innovations in real time without a huge technology investment or a small IT project, or 9 to 12 months to get a change. And it's really about, if I was to say what we're doing with that money, it's putting the power in the hands of the carrier customers and rideshare customers and self-insured customers, so they can create their own workflows, so they can add their own data fields, so that they can really take advantage of the platform in a way that some of the other platforms historically haven't let them do that.
We talk a lot and hear a lot about straight through processing. As you know, processing a claim, doing a claim, handling a claim is very, very different for an automobile than it is for a property.
Sure.
But when I say the term straight through processing, what does that mean to you?
Look, I think the industry has changed on this a lot, and just by way of background, right? I've been working in the insurance industry for over 20 years. I was a consultant for a long time, working with personal lines and commercial lines carriers, and then I got a real job and went to work for what I think is a great carrier, Travelers Insurance, on the business insurance side. Worked with really great people there, and then went to CNA, another great carrier on the commercial line side, and got an operating role driving worldwide field operations and around it. And so, straight through processing, going back to how I think about it and how we always used to think about it, is getting the right work to the right people at the right time. Somehow the industry's kind of evolved to say it's automating it soup to nuts, without any human involvement, which in some cases just isn't practical based on regulatory or compliance, or certainly expense. Your property example is fantastic, where you've got, maybe a roof damage, maybe water damage at the inside, and, it's different contractors that need to do it. And it's not like, oh, you automated and paid the claim. It doesn't mean that homeowner's house or that business's building has been restored and fixed, especially in this post-COVID world where, supplies and contractors and, is scarce. So, to answer your question, to us, straight through processing is very much about taking all of these complexities, and a claim is a party of many parties, and getting the right work to the right people with human involvement only where it's needed. So, to visualize that's, a series of assembly lines that the system creates based on the context of the claim. And that's what we're doing for property, where, a spoilage claim could maybe go straight through without any human intervention. But a property claim, you could certainly make an assignment to a third party or multiple third party vendors right away, because you're going to want to evaluate it without an adjuster having to manually push a button to make that assignment. And then when the estimate or the repair needs come back in, you can certainly auto pay the customer based on threshold without having to approve that, because that's what's expected these days, right? Like if I order, a really expensive item online and it shows up broken, I don't talk to a human to get it reset and fixed. Usually they just give me a credit or ask me to send it back and send the next one out. And that's where straight through processing, I think is going. And I think a lot of carriers, certainly the InsureTech, some of the more innovative, more legacy carriers as well, are really trying to focus on this, not about 100% solutions, but taking things that are just great customer experiences and using the technology to drive it that way.
You talked about your background and where you came from, and we want to keep talking about Snapsheet, but I want to take the opportunity to ask you some questions about that. You're a insurance guy.
Very much.
And now you're an insurance guy, and now you're an InsureTech guy, right? And so you moved to the technology side. A lot we see technology people create a solution that's applicable for insurance, and they move over and become, InsureTech or insurance people by virtue of their product that they created. You're the opposite of that. You're an insurance guy who's moved to the technology world. Talk for a minute about what that's like and what drew you to it.
Great question. What I'd say is, number one, I'm definitely an insurance person through and through, right? Spent most of my time on the underwriting side of the business before I moved into the claim side of the business. So a lot of perspective across the whole value chain: distribution, underwriting, pricing, product, operations, back office operations, claims, even M&A and things like that. But so a lot of diverse perspectives around it. I think first and foremost, I think people would say I'm passionate and I'm very impatient. And I think, I think working on the carrier side, I had a lot of great mentors, early days in consulting. They're all insurance people now, like Andrew Robinson, who's a CEO of Skyward Specialty now, was early days I worked for him as a consultant and very closely. So and then going to the traveler side, worked with just a fantastic leadership team of folks there, like Michael Klein and Scott Higgins and Bill Cunningham, just fantastic insurance people. And then the same thing can be said at CNA with the leadership team there. And I think I just was so impatient that I'd bang my head against the wall every day saying there's a better way to do this, right? That we can use technology or we can change it and try changes. And insurance carriers are just risk averse, and they aren't really set up for people that want to take risks and fail fast and try things. And I think, one of the maxims, one of the people I mentioned earlier said to me, was like, look, once a big insurance carrier knows what the right answer is, it takes 3 years to implement.
Sure. If it's fast tracked.
If it's fast tracked, right. And so to me, look, these are great companies. And that's kind of the mindset, because they're so big organizations that are built to last. And they're not about any individual. And, when you're immature, like I was, and maybe some people would say I still am, and impatient, you're like, why can't we go faster? Right. And so I think that's why, I left was really about, look, I want to be on the other side of this. And I got to tell you, and I think some of the Snapsheet folks would say this, I wasn't ready for it because, corporate strategy, even operations is like 3 yards in a cloud of dust at really big scale. And when you're building something and growing really fast, it's not ready, aim, fire. Sometimes it's just fire, aim, fire, aim. So I think that was probably a pretty eye-opening experience for my first year and a half to really understand and try to work with the tech side to understand how that gets built and implemented. And now I'm on the other side of that, trying to balance that, working with our carriers, and our engineering team to do that. And some days I think I do an okay job at that. And some days, we don't.
Some days you walk out of the room and they all laugh.
How?
I think that probably happens more often than not. So.
I only say that because with me, they don't even wait till I walk out of the room.
Yeah, that's true.
They just do it in front
you're
of me.
being kind. I'm sure that they do it to my face too in the room. But the reality is, you've got to have a little bit of a different mindset that you've got to fail fast. We talk about that a lot. You got to take some risk, and you got to really find partners that are willing to lean in with you, which we've found with a lot of great InsureTechs. But these companies are really at the forefront of trying to use technology differently in the insurance value chain that I just talked about. And they're willing to, try stuff. And that's really fun for our team to build really cool things that don't exist and implement them and test them and use the data to prove that they're different, which is no different than what we did, a decade ago, saying you could appraise damage through photos, after an auto accident. It's the same thing. It's just, a different part of the value chain, whether it's injury or property, where you guys are really, comfortable.
It was in June 2017 that they announced you as the chief operating officer. And here, 4 years later, in June of 2021, we see that president has been added to your title. Tell us about that. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, look, I don't fixate too much on what that is. We got a tried and true team that has a giant chip on their shoulder because the whole industry, tried to make sure Snapsheet couldn't exist. And then now, virtual auto appraisals is the way of the world. When you've got fantastic companies touting that in commercials and things like that, it's very different than what it was. And so, to me, as I think about being, the president of Snapsheet, it's really just, trying to continue to work really closely with the marketplace, our carriers, and our internal teams to make sure that we're, building and executing on what we say we are. There's a lot of noise out there in the industry around what people are saying they're doing, what they're doing, not just insurance, and what's real and what's not. And at the end of the day, it's all good for the industry because that means people are trying things. We think we have some, really differentiated technology products in the space. And my job is to make sure that the world knows that we've got a claim system that is, unparalleled at some of the capabilities that it has around engagement, communication, workflow, automation, all the things that lead to, digitizing the claims platform differently. And that's tried and true. And then, helping to prioritize resources so that we're investing in the right areas going forward. But that's not just my job, right? Like we've got a great team that does that. So I would say it's from Snapsheet. We want to continue to lead the industry in some of these products that we're building and continue to release new ones and stay ahead of the game. And I think a lot of carriers are doing a lot of things, but I think that our technology allows them to do it even better than what they've even said.
Let's talk about that. Back to this, you were a strategist, and I'm sure you still are. Now that you're not inside of a carrier and you're in the InsureTech world, which a lot of people would say is, one of the great strategic changes and directions in insurance today, you have a front row seat, really, and a lot of knowledge and background. What do you talk about for a minute? What do you see as a strategist looking out ahead? What kind of thoughts come to your mind about where things are and where they're going from an InsureTech and claims perspective?
I think that people have been talking about transformations in insurance for almost 20 years now. And I think that, replacing a platform is just not a transformation. And it's just not. You're just replacing a platform. And any platform can, if you follow the same work process, you follow the same workflow, you follow the same training, and you don't change your process, all the platforms are doing is capturing the data, right? And maybe you have better access to that data. It's not a bad thing, right? It's just where it is. So I think that what I'm seeing now, and this is true on underwriting side of the house, this is true on risk management, this is true in claims, it's true in service, is it's less lip service about, oh, we've got to replatform this and that's going to make us have better architecture or that's going to make us more efficient. It's like, no, we need to actually change our actual business and operating models to change how people want to do business. And, when in a world when the best customer experience is matched by your last best customer experience in your everyday life, think whatever brand that you buy digitally online,
Sure.
That's where insurance is. And I think it's not lip service anymore. And I think the biggest opportunity is also the biggest challenge for carriers, which is, do the carriers have the right leaders in their organizations to change the way they've always done it to maintain competition and to use the technology that's available in a way to change their operating model to get to better outcomes. And that could be speed, that could be, writing more policies, that could be distribution. Certainly it's true in claims. And I think this last year and a half with, COVID and the changes in frequency that were so dramatic in the industry, the carriers really didn't invest in those operating model changes because it was about getting home and making sure people are safe and making sure customers are safe and all the right things, right? And now as frequencies coming roaring back, right? And certainly cats and the weather environments seem to be even more volatile than what we've seen. Carriers are really stuck in a place where they've got a pricing environment is super competitive and you got inflationary factors. It's really about business model and operating model shifts. And do the carriers have the right people at the table? Do the InsureTechs have the right people at the table? And are they using the right vendor partners like Snapsheet at the table to get to outcomes that are going to maintain competitiveness, right? And whether that's on loss costs or whether that's on, distribution.
I want to ask you about your claim management system. And AWS, as an example, came along kind of serendipitously based on a lot of circumstances. And now we all know the AWS story. Is that kind of what happened with your claim management system? Was that you guys had built this incredibly robust system for yourselves and you thought, wow, we can take this out to market, or maybe it would serve more people than just ourselves? What was the story there?
Brad, CJ, I would say absolutely, right? Absolutely. That was the first starting point. You've got to get a toehold in this industry with a really unique product and feature. But from there, because of the complexities of implementing technology across this ecosystem and the just data privacy, security, InfoSec that in this environment, it's absolutely, and it always has been land and expand. Even when we started, it was one thing, and then we expanded off of that. So it was absolutely, if you go back, we're preparing for a strategy session in about 4 weeks, and we were pulling up some documents from way predating me. And absolutely, this was in the card. So first, I would say yes. But what really drove it into it was our customers asking for it. We got pulled into payments because, look, we were one of the first companies to take payment via a mobile app. People still think of us as an app company, and we don't have downloadable apps as part of our offering that much anymore because technology's changed, right? So to answer your question, more directly, the carriers and our customers, ultimately our Snapsheet appraisals offering was an outsourced offering where it was our people. They say, geez, we have our own people. They're really good. Can we use your technology with our people, right? You have really good digital engagement and workflows and automation. Is that something we can implement ourselves? And so that's what brought us first to commercialize that product, was to build what we were doing for them. And then obviously claims management is the perfect end-to-end workflow to that, to execute on that, which is very similar to an appraisal process where you basically have an F&OL, which is a lot of documents and a lot of data. And then you have to normalize that workflow across multiple adjusters and multiple lines of insurance. And then be able to execute it through coverage validation and ultimately to settlement and repairs and payout. And so it was very similar. And so absolutely it was strategically on our radar. What you started with AWS, where we're starting cloud native and starting with the ability to build more configurable technology means that we can offer the same platform to multiple carriers that use it differently, but under the same
Right.
infrastructure. And that's
Right.
essentially how Snapsheet was founded. Is we provided this appraisal services business to all these different carriers, non-standard, high net worth, major top 10, self-insured fleet company, all different workflows, all different policies, all under one container platform with unique workflows that apply to those carriers. So that's what gave us the confidence to do it. And obviously it doesn't hurt when you have a really good engineering team and a company of leaders that have a giant chip on their shoulder and love to hear it when people say, yeah, you can't do this. And so I think that helps also.
So before we run out of time, I want to touch on COVID real quick and ask you a COVID question. Of course, we work mostly on the property side, but our company has a lot of involvement on the auto side, ton of involvement on the auto side.
Sure.
And so you're cruising along, you're probably growing year over year, and then COVID hits, and all of a sudden, no one's driving. And I'm sure that had to affect your business as well, just from a volume standpoint. Volumes crashed through the table because people weren't driving and therefore they weren't having accidents. And now it's kind of come back, and we have many of our customers reaching out to us for help on the auto side. Talk about that, how COVID has affected you guys in that way.
Well, first, any of your customers that are reaching out to you on the auto side, they're happy to reach out to Snapsheet. Just kidding. No, I look, who would have thought in any scenario that the people that invented virtual appraising would be impacted the most when auto frequency dropped in half overnight?
Right.
It's completely, like I said, a black swan. So it's super counterintuitive. But the reality is and I've been on the carrier side, so I understand that. I think that the industry, did what the industry typically does in this situation. If a carrier had, people themselves, they weren't going to keep outsourcing auto appraisals to a third party when they have people. So they'd have people, that are their employees, not doing work. So that's why Snapsheet was impacted quite significantly. The whole industry went down on frequency significantly. I think Snapsheet went down even further because those customers where we were a significant portion of their claims volume, but they had staff, were able to insource their claims. So that had a huge impact on our business, on our people, on all of us. I think we were really quick to see it coming by just the nature of our global business, global investor base, our leadership team traveling all over the place and seeing masks pop up in January and February. So we were prepared for that change, and we had done the worst case modeling, and it certainly passed our worst case pretty quickly. But having said that, it also gave us an opportunity to really understand our relationships with our customers, really build out some new offerings in that business and focus our energy and efforts on our software platform. We built out one of the largest specialty commercial appraising operations in the country for motorcycles, RVs, delivery, semi-trucks, mobility, which were areas of the country and the economy that weren't as impacted, in fact, increased in terms of frequency during COVID. And we were always doing it, but never to the scale that we were. We also built out and spent a ton of effort building out our claim system. So now, as you fast forward a year, and what a difference a year makes, we're seeing frequency absolutely come back, faster than we expected. So it went away to a greater extent and faster than we thought, and now it's coming back way faster than we thought this year. And so it's us, rebuilding. And the good news is, we've done it before, so that we know we can do it. And we've hired, over 130 people in the last 90 days, with plans to hire, more than 100 more in the next couple of months across all product lines to support this growth. So it was something I'd never want to go through again, and something completely unforeseen. But I think our company managed, through it, and certainly our relationships with our partner carriers are strong because we all had to go through it together.
Well, we are thrilled to meet you and to hear more about the company. And the list of questions and topics just goes on and on and on with you guys. Just to close out, any thoughts or ideas you'd like to leave us with? We'd love to hear.
I think from my perspective, first, what you all are doing is great for the industry. I think creating visibility into all the different components of InsureTech is, as much as stuff's out there, it's still, there's a difference in the PR and the marketing and the reality. And I think things like this and you all affording companies this opportunity is fantastic. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the only second thing I'd say is that the one thing, and this isn't a Snapsheet comment, I think you would make the same commentary about your company, and I'm sure people that are competitors of Snapsheet would say the same thing. So the one thing I'd say is for carriers that have come across Snapsheet or any other vendor or carrier saying, oh yeah, we know what they do, or they do this. In this environment where technology changes so rapidly, we're investing so much money into the technology platforms that keeping up with what the companies are doing every 3 months and 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to understand what's relevant. I think when I was a carrier, people tended to look at strategy initiatives in 3 and 5 year increments. It was like, oh yeah, we looked at them a year and a half ago. And a year and a half ago is like 15 years in investment world, and certainly in the InsureTech world right now. And so anyone who's listening, I think, and that's true for all companies, like where Snapsheet was from a business maturity, product maturity, we look back every 3 months and 6 months and start laughing at how far we've advanced it. And I think our companies and InsureTechs don't do a good enough job of continuing to articulate that and having that cut through the PR and marketing, because everyone thinks everyone's already doing it and everyone's messaging starts to run together when there is huge differentiation out there.
Well, Andy, we want to thank you so much for being on today. It's always a treat to get to talk about Snapsheet and what it is. And it's just an amazing journey, just from the first time that we had somebody on to now. Your world has changed. And just as you said, if you haven't looked at Snapsheet recently, look at them. They're changing, they're bettering themselves. So we very much appreciate you being on, and we look forward to maybe the next time you're on.
That's awesome. I'll be on anytime you want. I love talking about the industry. So any topic, let me know.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Lee, you had to go, but Andy and I sat on the phone for about a half an hour after we finished and just talked about being in the industry and being on a carrier side and service provider side is so interesting. What a great guest who has terrific experience. Really appreciate having him.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the podcast. I did have to go at the end. He is a neat person. I can't wait to get together with him again and just to sit there and visit and talk about the world of insurance and what's all going on.
Thank you for being with us always. Thank you, Alicia Moss. Let me repeat that. Alicia Moss. Thank you. Our crackerjack content producer who makes sure that everything happens with guests and getting guests and scheduling guests. Alicia Moss. Remember that name, everybody. And we also couldn't do it without Astrid, our groupie. Everybody needs one. We have one. So eat your heart out, everybody who doesn't have a groupie, because Lee and I do. So with all that, we'll say
goodbye, everybody.